Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. So today we continue to discuss about the point of truth, the last truth, the path to any surface that includes the A4 paths, and we discussed about the second one, the wise intentions. In that wise intention, we discussed about the renunciation. We discussed about the practice of generosity. Uh, so today we continue to discuss about the next virtue, the compassion. So again, this is the mind that the Buddha wants us to have in order to transform the sufferings of ourselves and others. So for the first four paths, the right understanding, we understand clearly about the law of karma or the cause and effect. We understand the three marks of the system, like impermanence principle, the non-self principle, and the suffering principle. To understand them clearly and properly, that's why we need to develop the right intentions of renunciation, including forgiveness or renouncing the attachment to our possessions or any attachment of the mind. And the next one we discussed about the generosity. Last couple of times we discussed that how the Buddha laid out some principle that we can follow in order to give unconditionally, like giving without any kind of anger, any kind of oppressions, any kind of expectations. So this a long list of those principles that we need to follow. So today we continue to discuss about one of the most important principle in Buddhism is compassion. And compassion go hand in hand with wisdom. And we see that probably Buddhism is one of the most compassionate traditions because throughout history there is no holy war in Buddhism. That means Buddhists never start war with any other traditions based on the names of Buddhism. And of course, we were oppressed throughout histories in many parts of the world. Wherever Buddhism spread to, it merged with the local traditions, custom, and traditions to bring the peacefulness and happiness to the local people. So that's why most of the time, for all the times, Buddhism is spread around the world peacefully, without aggressive like other traditions. And let me show you some historical facts that prove how Buddhism is so compassionate and so peaceful to compare with other religions. So let me share with you some video clips as well as some image that could illustrate that kind of principle. First of all, I'd like to share with you this short animations.
Two monks were washing their food bowls in the river. They noticed the scorpion drowning. One of them immediately scooped it up and set it on the bank. In the process, he was stung. The monk went back to washing his bowl. The scorpion fell into the water again. The monk saved the scorpion, and he was stung again. Having seen all this, the other monk asked, "Brother, why do you continue to save the scorpion when you know its nature is distinct?" "That's because to sting is its nature, and to save is mine."
So here you can see this short video clips that illustrate how Buddhists abide compassion as its nature. So here the scorpion fell out to the river, and the monks set it and put it on the route. Of course, he was stung by this scorpion, and again the scorpion fell down to the river, and the monks set it one more time. So yes, but he was stung by this scorpion. So the monk asked, "Why do you need to set this scorpion? Why you were stung by these animals?" So this monk say, "Well, uh, the nature of scorpion is to sting, but for my nature is to save." So again, no matter what happened, Buddhists always abide with this principle, the compassionate principle, to save others. And I will show you a lot of clips. It's in the 12th centuries when the Muslims invade north of India. They kill thousands and thousands of Buddhist monks and nuns, and they destroy many great Buddhist monastery, temples, stupa, and so forth. And in this image, we show how these Muslim generals were laughing or talking while they look at this corpse of Buddhist monks lying around after they were killed by them. And so in history, we were oppressed, assaulted, or persecuted by others, but we never raised arms to kill other, to deter other people. So we always based on the principle of peace and non-violence. So in Vietnam, around the 17th century, there was a king. He at first didn't like Buddhism, so he ordered all the monks and nuns to go to the forest, a mountain, and so he didn't allow the monks and nuns stay in his city at all. So whoever uh, didn't follow his order would be executed. So yes, there were many monks and nuns left the city uh, for forests and mountains, uh, and of course the temple were ransacked or destroyed by the armies or by the other people. So there was one Zen master. Uh, One day he went down uh, to see the king, and he brought with him a box, and inside that box, and he told the king that there was a jewel in this box, and if you open this box, you recognize these jewels. So when the king opened the box, actually there's no more jewels. There's no gold or jewels all except a long letters that explain how Buddhism spread to Vietnam beneficially to its people throughout many centuries. It have brought peace, unity, uh, and happiness to the whole countries in so many centuries. So after that, the king recognized his mistake and he repent his mistake by ordering people to make this type of statue, and it showed that he kneel down on the floor respectfully, and on the top of his back is the Buddha statue that signifies how gratefulness is. So that is one of the unique statue uh, of Vietnamese Buddhist tradition, and actually probably this is the only one around the world. So this story uh, mm, symbolizes that Buddhism didn't raise arms to against anyone, even in the times that it was oppressed by authorities, but it tried to solve problems in a meaningful way, in a peaceful way. So that is one of the story. And another story recently, um, around uh, 2001, we know that Taliban they blew up one of the oldest and tallest statue in Afghanistan. Of course, even the moderate Muslim tried to stop them, but they still didn't listen, and eventually they blew up this statue.
In 2001, the Taliban swept through Afghanistan's Bamyan Valley. Their target was Bamyan's colossal stone Buddha statues, which had stood for over 1,500 years. The world watched powerless, as one of its true wonders was lost. The savage destruction of this World Heritage Site shocked the world.
Yeah, so somehow they was condemned by even the moderate Muslim and people around the world because they fill up that type of borders and largest statue in Afghanistan. So, but the Buddhist communities around the world didn't respond violently toward those extremists, mostly Taliban. So just imagine if they blew up politicians, religious leaders, statue. So you would imagine how they would respond. So, but for the Buddhists, because we are taught and actually practice the non-violent principle as whereas as the compassionate principle. So we would not respond an eyes to an eyes. We always recognize that everyone has Buddha natures, no matter who they are, whether they're Buddhist or non-Buddhist, whether they animals or human. They still have one day to correct themselves, become a good people, and eventually they would become Buddhas. So that's our principle. That's why we recognize just because of ignorance they have done this type of evil act, but still we did not condemn them as evil people, but we recognize it because of bad mind, bad thoughts. That's why they create that type of bad karma. And lately, you know what happened in Tibet or in other country. So they say that
Buddhist monks arriving in
many Tibetan monks, nuns, lay people, including male and female, burn themselves to protest the oppressions, the oppression of the Chinese communists that try to destroy Tibetan traditions, culture, and religions in Tibet. So here we could see this short video clips that show the demonstration of Tibetan people to display the Tibetan monks, nuns, and lay people who have sacrificed themselves for the sake of their countries, culture, and religion.
Dharamsala after walking more than 2,600 kilometers for Tibet. The rally from Bangalore took more than a month and was in support of a movement for better treatment of Tibetans by China.
This kind of work actually helps us to spread the message to the outside community, and within the Tibetan community it becomes a reminder again and again that we are in exile, that our country is under Chinese occupation, and the situation in Tibet is really getting worse, and it's dangerous for everybody living in Tibet.
The men were also showing solidarity for far more shocking protests seen in China. 2 monks from the Kirti monastery in Sichuan province are in hospital on Monday after setting themselves on fire, according to state news agency Xinhua. Lobsang Khaosang on the left and Lobsang Konchok are both in their late teens, say the advocacy group Free Tibet. Khaosang's 21-year-old brother on the right died after immolating himself at the same monastery in March, while the monk in the middle died last month after swallowing petrol, dousing himself, then setting himself on fire. Dharamsala is the headquarters for the Dalai Lama, who the monks see as their rightful spiritual authority. He fled Tibet with about 80,000 people amid a failed uprising against Chinese rule in 1959. On Saturday, the 76-year-old said he would consult Buddhist scholars when he's about 90 about a possible successor. But Beijing claims the right to approve any reincarnations of the Dalai Lama. Violence flared during anti-government protests in Tibet 3 years ago. And human rights groups say 300 monks were detained this year. Free Tibet says the trend of self-immolation in the last 6 months
shows just how badly Tibetans are suffering. Caroline Malone, Al Jazeera.
Okay, so here somehow up to now is about 156 Tibetan people, including monks, nuns, men and women, who sacrifice themselves to protest the Chinese occupations and oppressions. And again, the most they could do is to burn themselves to show that type of protest, so they would not carry any bombs to blow up anything that may be harmful to others. Again, that's demonstrate how peaceful they are when they try to raise their voice, to raise the awareness of this kind of oppressions. And that's happening now in China. And of course, in Vietnam, in the 60s, there was a monk, a Buddhist monk, that burned himself to protest the oppressions of the Catholic regimes that oppress Buddhist communities in Vietnam. So let me show you some of this image. And this was shocking.
Hello and welcome to History Pod. On the 11th of June 1963, Vietnamese Buddhist monk Thich Quang Duc burned himself to death at a busy crossroads in Saigon. Quang Duc's self-immolation came in response to the persecution of Buddhists by the government under Diem, who belonged to the Catholic minority and was supported by the USA. Buddhists were regularly subjected to discriminatory policies that ranged from limited access to United States aid to employment. Even the military saw some Buddhists convert in order to improve their chance of promotion. In early May 1963, the government banned the Buddhist flag. This coincided with Phat Dan, otherwise known as Vesak, the birthday of Gautama Buddha. Buddhists were incensed by the ban, and on the 8th of May, a number of Buddhists in the city flew the flag and later marched on the government-controlled radio station, where government troops repelled the protesters with live ammunition. 9 protesters were killed, but Diem blamed the violence on the Viet Cong. His refusal to hold the local authorities to account or to grant religious equality triggered yet more protests around the country. On the morning of the 11th of June, 350 Buddhist monks and nuns processed along the road outside the Cambodian embassy in Saigon. Thich Quang Duc calmly emerged from a car and adopted the lotus position on a cushion in the intersection, where he was then doused in petrol from a 5-gallon can. After chanting a prayer, he struck a match, and his body was engulfed in flames. Photographs of his self-immolation shocked the world and increased international pressure on Diem, who failed to implement reforms that he promised in the aftermath. On the 1st of November, he was overthrown in a coup and was assassinated the following day.
Again, this is what happened in Vietnam during the 60s. So this monk burned himself to protest the Catholic regimes that oppress Buddhism in the violent ways. So that's how the Buddhist people respond to the oppressions in the non-violent ways throughout the history. So I want to provide this type of information so that you can see throughout histories, most Buddhists remain peaceful, non-violence, and compassion toward others, regardless of how other people treat them, oppress them, or harm them. So that's why we uh, can be considered as a most peaceful and non-violent traditions around the world. So before we discuss further, I like to share this kind of information so that you can see we live with our own actions. We abide the principle in action, not in principle. Of course, most traditions talk about non-violence, compassion, but for us, we implement this kind of principle throughout history. And that's why we don't have any kind of holy war that kill other religious people who were non-Buddhist. So we never done that kind of things to other people. Even they oppress us, even they harm us. So it's just, the thing that's is still rare for all religions, but in Buddhism, most people about this principle. So this like introduction to this kind of compassionate and non-violence principle that we abide to. Again, let me go back. That's why the Buddha reminds us that in this Eightfold Path, after having the right views about the law of cause and effect or karma, we need to develop wise intention or right intention so that we can bring the peacefulness and happiness to ourselves and others. Otherwise, if we don't have the right mindset, there's just no way for us to bring the happiness for ourselves. So, like last time we talked about renunciation, patience, generosity. So now we continue to talk about loving kindness and compassion. So in order to live with peace, we need to invoke this type of right mindset. So again, loving kindness and compassion are considered as one of the most important principle that we put in actions throughout history. So that's my introduction, so that you can see we apply those principles in our life, not in theories and principles, or not talking only. So that's why you can say that we abide with this kind of non-violent and peacefulness and compassion throughout history, so that we can bring our own peacefulness and happiness to ourselves and others without implementing those principles in our daily lives. There's no way for us to bring the peacefulness and happiness for ourselves and others. So the purpose of having the faith, a set of belief system, is to transform our mentalities. So that's why the Buddha provide this kind of principle for us to live and put them in practice so that we can alleviate the surface of ourselves and others. So why Dalai Lama, he said that compassion, the aspirations, a state of mind, wanting others to be free from suffering, is not a passive, it's not the empathy alone, but this is the altruism that actually strives to free ourselves and others from sufferings. So the union, compassion would be implemented in our lives. In the what do you call the six parameters, the six professions, the Buddha's reminds us that we need to develop this kind of compassion through the practice of generosity. So when we help other people without any kind of conditions, that's real generosity, that's real compassion. Like the mothers take care of their own children without asking anything to return, without any conditions. So that is the real loving kindness. That is the real compassion, and that is the real generosity. Otherwise, it's just like we do business with each other when we help other people, and we expect other people to give us a favor or help us back, or if we expect them to say thank you, appreciate it. So that's we expect them to have those kind of things to return to us. So again, that's not true generosity. That's not true love. The love, the compassions occur only when we have other people without any string attached, without any conditions, without hidden meanings. And so that's why in Buddhism, compassion is one of the most important principle, and the four sublime conducts that the Buddha reminds to develop compassion, loving kindness, joyfulness, and forgiveness. So the Buddha consider those sublime conducts a principle, a lofty for us to follow and practice. In Tibetan traditions, it has the tradition that what we call Tonglen. Tonglen is reverse the patterns of human beings. Most of the time, we want to bring happiness for ourselves and disregard other people, whether they're happy or suffer. We may not care much, but in Tonglen practice, it reverses the pattern that we need to accept the principle, the sufferings for ourselves, and give out the happiness and peacefulness to other people. So that's what Tonglen is about. And again, according to Buddhist view, before we spread compassion or loving kindness to other people, we need to develop our own self-compassion. Because if we don't take care of ourselves physically, mentally, and spiritually, there's no way for us to bring peace and happiness to other people. For example, if our mind is so anxious, if our mind is so confused and have all kind of negative thoughts, there's no way for us to bring the positive energy and spread the compassion or loving kindness to other people. So that's why we need to start with ourselves. So that's what we call self-compassion. In the meaning that we recognize and accept our mistake as human, because no one is perfect, and we recognize the sufferings that we endure physically, mentally, and spiritually. Yeah, physically, we know we getting older, we have some kind of illness, and eventually we would pass away. With that kind of understanding ourselves, we would mm, easily to understand audible situations when they were sick, when they were suffering physically, mentally, and spiritually. So whichever emotions that we have go through, whether it's this anxiety, worriness, stress, and so forth, we understand ourselves that those type of mental fluctuations bring some sort of sufferings to us. So with that type of understanding, we would try to implement some Buddhist practice like meditations or the Buddha names or the mantra to calm our mind so that we can have that peacefulness uh, and happiness in our mind before we have other people. So in one particular sutra, the Dharma Sutra, the Buddha said that I have transformed all living beings into utmost peacefulness, happiness of nirvanas. So when I was young, I read this passage and could not understand uh, the meanings of it. So and later on, I recognized as so when the Buddha say he has transformed all living beings into the utmost peacefulness and happiness of nirvana, that means he has transformed his own mind, his own negative emotions, and his own fluctuation uh, of his mind. So because he could transfer all of them, so that's why he could attain nirvana. He could become enlightened person. So with that kind of qualifications of enlightenment, so he could step out to help us. So without transforming his own uh, negative minds or negative emotion, there was no way for him to teach others. So do we. So we need to develop that type of self-compassion uh, to recognize as if we have self criticism or feeling of unworthiness, annoyance, frustration, stress, sadness, and unjustified or any negative emotions or reactions that would not be helpful or beneficial for us. So that's why we need to uh, use uh, some mental trainings techniques like meditation to let go of those negative thoughts, and with the recognitions of the sufferings, whether it's physical or mental or spiritual suffering, as part of human experience, we would accept those kind of sufferings and utilize the Buddha's practice of mindfulness or meditations to transform them so that we can be peaceful within ourselves. And so that's why the Buddha said that as long as we have peaceful mind, the world will be more peaceful. So again, depend upon our state of mind. If we have the positive state of mind, we will see things in the positive way, and vice versa. If we have the negative thoughts of mind, like we feel depressed where like we feel sad and so forth, we will see everything as sadness, as depression. But if we have the state of mind of possibility or compassion, we would see everything in the positive way. We would spread that type of energy, compassionate or positive energy toward other people surrounding us. So that's why in this kind of wise intentions, the Buddha's demands to instill this kind of right mind, this kind of compassion and loving kindness, so that we can bring our own peacefulness and happiness. Because again, everyone wants to be cared, everyone wants to be loved. And so if we want other people care for us, if we want other people to be compassionate toward us, we need to develop those qualities of loving kindness and compassion toward other people. So of course, as human, usually we say that, well, if you want me to love you, you should love me first. If you want me to care for you, you should care for me first. But in Buddhist approach, we reverse the patterns that we know. Things that we put out there, we get back to us. If we put out the positive mind, if we put out the positive energy, if we put out compassion and loving kindness, we will get those positive energy. We will get those loving kindness and passion back. And that's why in one particular sutra, it's very popular one, what they call the Metta Sutra, and they say that we have the wish that all beings be at ease, whatever living beings they may be, whether they weak or strong, whether they are great, mighty, medium, short or small, they seen or unseen, though living near or far away, though born to be born, we wish all of them be at peace, and we wish that no one deceives another or despise anyone in any state. We wish that no one have anger or ill will, that wish to harm each upon another, like the mothers always try to protect own child. So with that type of balance, compassion, we should cherish all living beings. We graduate the loving kindness over the entire world. We spread upward to the sky and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded. We free with hatred and ill wills, whether while we're standing, walking, sitting, or lying down. We would keep that kind of mindfulness. So this is the sublime abiding. This is what the Buddha say in the Metta Sutra, Compassion Sutra. So basically, with this kind of instruction or guidelines, the Buddha encouraged us to spread our loving kindness and compassion toward everyone's or every beings, whether they are seen or unseen, whether they are small, medium, or large, whether they're strong or weak, and so forth. So with this kind of loving kindness and compassion, we spread everywhere for those sentient beings. So with this kind of guidelines, we can see that how the Buddha instruct us to develop loving kindness for ourselves and others. So since time is up, let me end today. So next time I will discuss further some benefits of developing loving kindness and compassion toward ourselves and others. And so thank you. Nam mô Shakyamuni Buddha.